Hi. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to talk about statistics, but what we can actually really do. So in the past we have calculated them, but now what we need to do is start using them to actually talk about what we're doing rather than just basic numeracy. We need to understand what they mean. Okay, so what we're going to look at is two examples here, and it's all about our language that we use when we use our answers. We can't just state the numbers, we need to actually justify our reasons and explain. So there's going to be some key points to note. Okay, so we look at example 1. A sprinter compared average race times with a friend. Make valid statements comparing them. So in this case I'm using the mean, and I am for example 2, but another example of average is median. So median does show average, I'm just deciding to use mean here. So we have got the mean of both people, both sprinters, and we also got the range. Now remember, mean is a measure of average, and range is a measure of spread, about how spread out the data is. Okay, so we need to have two statements here, one comparing their means and one comparing their ranges. So if we look there, and we also need to make sure that we apply the sentences to the context of the question. So in this case, it's a sprinter. If you think about a sprinter in real life, they want it to be lower. So we need to think about our language carefully. So looking straight away at the means, Danny is at 22.4 and Kylie is at 21.3. So considering this is a race, we want to be faster. So that means we can already straight away read off that Kylie has a faster mean, so she is doing better on average than Danny. So I can write that, and then you point out the noticeable thing I just said, on average. It's a very important thing to add. You need to have that in the sentence. You can see there, on average, Kylie is faster than Danny because her mean is lower. And now look at the range. Now remember, range is a measure of spread out. So the bigger our range is, the more spread out the data is. So we look here, Kylie's got a larger range than Danny's, which means her data must have been more spread out. She might have had a higher average, but she had larger highs and lower lows. So because the range is higher, we can write another sentence. So it's a slightly different language there. Kylie is less consistent than Danny. Because her range is higher, it means she's got less consistency within her races. So we can say Kylie is less consistent than Danny. I could have equally said the opposite sentences, and I would have been just as correct. If I focused it from Danny's point of view, I would have said, on average, Danny is slower than Kylie, and Danny is more consistent. So what we can think about this in real life is that basically, Kylie is faster, but she has more slow days, and she's got better fast speed days and worse slow days. So Danny is more consistent and Kylie is slightly faster. So if we look at example 2, heart rates were compared to adults and children. Make valid statements about the info. So straight away we can compare the means. We can read that the adults have an average beats per minute, which is what BPM stands for, of 77. Whereas children had an average BPM of 81. So what we can say from this survey is So what we can say is, on average, children have higher heart rates than adults. And now if we look at the range, can see here that children have a beats per minute of 22 for range, and adults have a beats per minute of 12. So, what we can then say is that children are going to be less consistent with their heart rates, or they have more spread out data. So there we go. On average, children have higher heart rates than adults, but children's heart rates are less consistent than adults. What's noticeable, I would say, from these sentences is that at no point have I needed to put numbers in. I'm mostly just commenting on my interpretation of the data. I do not need to have numbers in it as long as it's correctly implied, or correctly explained. Okay? So the main takeaway point from this is mean, medians, they are measures of average. So when we describe them in sentences, we need to have the statement on average. Range is a measure of spread, which is a measure of consistency. So the higher a range is, the less consistent it is. The lower a range is, the more consistent you are. So we need to have that phrasing in there, less consistent or more consistent depending on the situation. The last thing to take away is always relate the sentences to the context of the question. Okay? That's the end of the video.